Hi, in this video we're going to look at some questions using a diagram for trigonometry. And just to remind you of our cast diagram that tells us that in quadrant 1 the trig ratios that are positive going to 2, 3 and 4 is on the screen. Right, we're going to start with this question, a past paper question. In the diagram below, P minus 8t is a point in the Cartesian plane such that OP is 17 and reflex angle XOP is equal to theta. So on inspection of the diagram, we're going to, from point P, draw a line perpendicular to the x-axis, and then I want to remind you that P minus 8 represents x and T actually represents y. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find out what is the value of t. So looking at the diagram, we know that the y value is t and the x value is negative. Notice also that t is in the third quadrant. Remember, in the third quadrant, the y values are negative. So we're going to use the famous Pythagoras and work out t. So very simply put, t squared will be equal to, and in this case we have our hypotenuse to be 17 squared minus our x value, which is minus 8 squared, and we need to tell the marker or give the marker a reason, and that is quite simple, Pythagoras. And you can use your calculator to work out what is 17 squared minus 8 squared, and that should give you 225. And then to find t, we find the root of 225, and that actually gives us 15. But remember, I said t has to be negative because we are sitting in the third quadrant. And there we have our value of t to be negative 15. And we can put that down into our diagram, negative 15. And there's our first one, giving us 2 marks. We go to the second question. Just want to erase my board. The next question there, if we are reading, it says find cos of negative, on this question, cos of negative theta. So remember what we said, whenever we deal with a negative angle, we can add 360, which gives us fourth quadrant. Or remember, we're going into the reverse direction, and there's our negative, which is sitting in the fourth quadrant, and we know in the fourth quadrant, cos is positive. So remember from our trig definitions, cos is x over r, and looking at our diagram, the value of x in our diagram is minus 8, and the value of r is 17. So we get a minus 8 over 17. Okay, our next question, we are required to find 1 minus sine theta. So we're going to start with 1 minus sine theta. And remember from definition, sine is actually y over r. So that'll give us 1 minus, and we found y to be negative 15 over our r value, which is our radius, to be 17. And that turns out to be 1 plus negative times negative is a positive, and that gives us 1 and 15 over 17, or you could say 32 over 17. Okay, our next question tells us that sine 17 is equal to a, and without using a calculator, express the following terms of a. And the first question is tan 17. So if we inspect sine 17, which I want to write down, and if that's a, let's write it as a fraction, a over 1. Now the definition of sine is y over r. So remember, we've got the y value, we have the r value, but we don't have the x value. And we know if we are trying to find tan 17, tan is y over x. So we need the x value, and we know that we can do that via Pythagoras. Okay, so we're going to draw a triangle in the first quadrant as we have an angle of 17, and 17 is in the first quadrant. And very quickly, if I draw a triangle, and what I'm going to do now is put in the values that I actually worked out. So we said that the y value is a, the radius is 1. So using Pythagoras, I'm actually going to work out, remember that represents r, that's our y, I'm going to work out x. So using Pythagoras, I can say x squared is equal to, the radius is 1 squared minus y, which is a squared, and my reason is Pythagoras. And that actually gives me x squared is equal to 1 minus a squared. And to find x, I've got to find the square root of 1 minus a squared. Now x is positive there, so we can leave it in that form. And then the question is to find, or let's put it down to our diagram, that the x value now is 1 minus a squared. And to find tan 17, we can now say that tan is y over x. So our y value is a over x, which we found to be root of 1 minus a squared. Okay, the next question is to find sine 107. Now, just to remind you that the angle here is 17. So this diagram helps us with 17 degrees. So I want to express 107, hopefully using some form, and make sure that I get a 17 using, either I could use 180 minus, or I could use a 90 plus due to reduction formula and co-ratios. So very quickly, I could say that 107 can be written as 90 plus 17. So I'm going to take my sine 107, and then I'm going to break it up and say, right, sine of 90 plus 17, which is now our co-ratio. Remember, we are in a second quadrant, and in our second quadrant, sine is positive, and the co-ratio of sine is cos, and that turns out to be cos of 17. And we know that cos from definition is x over r. The x value in the diagram is root 1 minus a squared over your radius, which is 1. And that gives us our final answer of anything divided by 1 will remain the same. And we got root of 1 minus a squared.